Sean, what's up, man? It's good to see you moved out of the sarcastically great state of California to the not sarcastic great state of Tennessee.
Definitely not sarcastic. It is awesome here.
Are you in Nashville? Where are you? Did you move to because I've spent a little time in Nashville and Franklin, which is it's amazing. It's beautiful.
We're in Franklin, and
Okay, got
it's
it.
just outside. We're actually like 15 minutes out of Franklin near Nolensville is the little
Okay.
town over here.
Yeah.
And it's kind of rural, but not. We're like right on the edge of all the developments and stuff. So it seems rural and farm. Across the street, they have on both sides of us across the street, because we're on kind of like a corner thing here. They have cows and goats, and it looks
Nice.
like a farming
Target
community.
practice for you for hunting season.
Yeah, they might get a little upset.
They might charge you. Those would be very expensive archery targets.
Yeah, there's plenty of deer though running around, all kinds of other stuff. But yeah,
Are
that's
you
where
near
we're at.
Sparta by chance? Does that ring a bell?
Not super close. No,
Okay.
no,
The reason
not
I ask is my brother-in-law's in Sparta. So, and
okay.
Sparta's very rural. He's got his acreage out there, and they're doing bees and cows and all kinds of pigs, all kinds of stuff. So I didn't know how
Yeah.
close you guys were. Yeah,
Well,
it's a beautiful area,
already
man.
you said like the comparison from here to California is it's today's 4th of July. Happy 4th of July, by the way. Happy Independence
Yeah,
Day.
likewise, man.
And it last night we blew off a bunch of fireworks because we're going to Franklin today for they have a giant show there, I guess, and a big like festival and stuff.
Nice.
But last night we blew off fireworks. We can never do that in California. We lived in a high fire zone.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it was like kind of terrifying if you did light anything off. So we didn't do
Oh,
it.
I know
for
you're
that
going to burn
sake.
down, hundreds of houses and tens of thousands of acres. Yeah, I definitely would not shoot fireworks off in California.
Yeah. So here was our first experience for all of our kids to be able to light our own. And I mean, like the big mortar ones, that are just giant, and they sell them everywhere out here. And so they just had a blast, like the time of their
Nice.
life last night, which was
Yeah,
cool.
that's what we're going to be doing tonight. We got a bunch of friends and whatnot coming over. And I spent a bunch of money way too much money on fireworks. And we've got the pools clean. And my wife's like, let's get a bounce house. I'm like, sure, why not? Get a bounce house. So we've got like 4 or 5 families coming over. I think there's 25 or 26 kids last count. Somebody told me. I'm like, oh, okay, well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see
That's
how it
the
goes. It should be
best
good.
though.
Nah, we'll
The
have a good
fact that
time.
you can do it,
Of course.
and a place like California, it's like you can't even wrap your brain around it if you grew up in a place like that.
Yeah.
Just the ability to do it, which is funny to say, right? Like to have the ability.
Yeah, it's a bit
to do
ironic.
it.
I mean, I get it. Like if you're in a high fire zone,
That
and
part
it's,
I get. Yeah, that part for
California's
sure.
been in a drought for, 2 decades at this point, but at the same time, like, I don't even know if you can light little spinning flowers on your driveway, let alone, these big mortars that you're talking about.
That's what I'm saying. You can't.
Yeah, that's
even
a
if you're
problem.
responsible and stuff like that.
That's a problem. Well, cool, man.
crazy.
Well, hey guys, for those of you who don't know, this is Sean Villalobos. He's filling in for Kip Sorensen. Kip's probably lighting fireworks right now as we speak. I don't know what he's doing, but he said, hey man, I can't make it. So between us 3, we can usually get 2 of us on the Ask Me Anything. And what we're doing today is we're fielding questions specifically from our Facebook group. So if you go to facebook.com/group/order of man, you are going to be able to find our group, and you're going to have to request access, answer yes to a couple of questions, and then you're in. So that's where we're fielding questions from. So let's get after it, man.
All right. First question comes from Zachary Baker. He says, how to deal with toxic and or overbearing grandparents as a parent and as their adult child. So his parents he's talking about. We've
Right.
tried addressing these issues and our concerns, and it was not received well. We were basically asked to look past it all and think about the good times. After standing our ground and asking for some kind of understanding in their end, my wife and I were viciously attacked verbally, insulted, and threatened for expressing our concerns. My mother used to watch the kids regularly, and that's no longer the case. Obviously, cutting my parents out of my life completely is not something I'd like to do. But at this point, I don't know what else to do to protect myself, my family, and our mental health. Any advice would be great. I know you've touched on it before, but some fresh opinions would be helpful.
I mean, really, it sounds like you've done it, frankly, and the hard part is that although you may have done it exactly right, and I don't know if you have it, but it sounds like you've established boundaries. There's been some consequences. You and your wife have upheld those boundaries, which obviously you need to do, because if you're not willing to stand by them, they're not really boundaries. It's kind of like having a border, but an open border policy. It's like, well, what's the point of the border then? Do we really have a border? If it's an open border policy, the answer would be no, right? Same thing with your expectations and your standards that you have with other people, whether it's your parents, friends, family, coworkers, whatever. If you have boundaries in place and you're not willing to enforce those boundaries because you're afraid or you're timid or passive or weak, why even have the boundaries at all? So it sounds like, based on what you said in this short little paragraph, you've done it right. And now you're like, well, we don't want this to happen. Well, tough. That's part of the reality, is that sometimes we make decisions and we put things in place that aren't going to be favorable or not going to produce optimal outcome. The optimal outcome is that you and your mother and your father are engaged in your life and their grandkids' life, and it's a pleasant, amicable relationship, and you guys have fun and you break bread together. Sounds like that's not really possible. If you do want to reconcile, what I would suggest is to open up the lines of communication again and just say that, hey, mom, dad, look, the last time we talked about this, obviously it went very bad. It went very poorly. I really want you guys in my life. I want you in our children's life. I'm not saying that we're willing to sacrifice on our boundaries and our expectations, but I want to explain myself and let you know why these boundaries are in place and why this is important to both of us. And if you can work with us in these areas, then we want you to be we love you. We want you to be part of our life. And so I thought I would reach back out and let you know that let's wipe the slate clean, but here are our expectations and here's why they're important to us. And are you willing to honor those things? And if the answer is still no, whether that's what they say or the way that they act, I mean, what more can you do at that point? You've approached it maturely. You've set the boundaries. You've honored them by reaching back out. You've honored your wife and your children by having those boundaries in place and leading them effectively. That's it, man. That's all I got for you. I wish there was more, but that's it. You're doing it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if it hasn't been done, also establish that, like, where you're coming from. And it sounds like with good intention, that something similar, not quite like this, happened with me, with my mom, but it not in an overbearing way. She just liked to give her advice, on how I was going to parent, how I should do things. And she didn't agree with a lot of the ways that I was parenting my kids, because it was different than the way she did it. She was very strict, and, she would, like, a zero tolerance type rule. She would snap and, and hit us and, spank us and stuff like that. Like, I can't say I was ever beaten, but I got some pretty good, beatings as a kid. But I mean, that was her way. It was like a zero tolerance thing. It was like kids should be seen, not heard, and, that kind of stuff. So I didn't agree, and had the conversation, but I also had to let her know, and she didn't, this was the part she didn't like, was that we were best friends, because she was a single mom. And so we were literally, like, I was her best friend. And then I met my wife, and then my wife became more important than her. And I hadn't had that conversation with her until it came down to, she got a little overbearing, or she, would complain about my wife, and she would blame it on my wife, like the way I was changing my parenting stuff. And so I had to have the conversation, like, look, that's fine if that's your opinion, but I want you to know, no matter what your opinion is, she's my wife, and now she's the most important person in my world. And next to that is our kids. And the way that my wife and I have decided to parent our kids is our decision. And you can tell me everything you want, you can agree or disagree, but the way that we're going to parent our kids, we've decided upon. And quite frankly, you don't have a say in the matter. And I'm sorry,
exactly right.
But now you're third in line, and you might not want to hear it, but you need to hear it maybe. because you're still talking to me like you're first in line. Not that I don't love you, not that I'm not grateful for everything you did for me growing up. And that was a hard conversation. I mean, she basically, she hung up on me and didn't talk to me for months because that's the way she did things. But, but then when she talked to me later on, it was clear and she understood it. And then it was less, just the dialect changed. And then I had to mention it a few other times down the road, but it did get better and better. She was around less. And then when she didn't, the overbearing part was gone, but it took a while. It probably took, a solid couple of years before she was comfortable being around without being angry.
Yeah, I bet.
But I had to be very clear. And that was one of the hardest conversations I had ever had, especially with her. Because I kind of knew where it was going ahead. But if I didn't do it, it either would have kept on happening and made it uncomfortable for my wife and I, or it would have created false expectations. It would have affected our kids. It would have affected, every part of the relationship.
Yeah.
So it was better to pull the Band-Aid. So if he hasn't done that part, I think it's important that he add that in the next conversation with the expectations, like you said.
I think, and I really appreciate you sharing that. I think that's a pretty common occurrence, maybe not to the degree that it was with your mother, but I certainly had those conversations and those feelings with my mom. Even on our wedding day, I could tell she was like mad, I'm like, what is your problem? And that's what it was. Her little boy, my mom raised me on her own, and my sister, her little boy was no longer her little boy. And she was like bitter about it. She was not to the degree. Yeah, there's me and my younger sister who's 3 years younger than me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
so
man,
it's harder because you're like the man of the house, right?
Of course, right. Yeah. But at the same time, one of the things that you said is you're third in line, and if you think about that, that could be received fairly harshly. But to spin that on its head is actually, I think, congratulations, you did a wonderful job. I'm a man. I've got a wife, a woman that I want to partner with. We want to raise a family together. I'm successful enough not only to take care of myself, but a wife and partner with in this life. Like, congratulations, you did your job. And here's the beauty: you just got a promotion. Now you're a mother and a mother-in-law. So you just got a daughter, and in the very near future, you're going to be a grandma. And the grandma's role is different than the mother's role. Like, you get all the good without all the bullshit. Like, that's the best part. And I need you to be my children's grandmother. You're not their mom. You're my mother, but I'm an adult and you've done a good job. And now you get to play the role of grandmother, which is awesome. Congratulations. Here's what that role looks like to me. What does that look like to you? And how is that going to change from your role of a boy, a young man? Because that's not the arrangement anymore.
Yeah. And I did that. And it sounds like you did too, where I thanked her and appreciated her and basically said everything that you said. So yeah, that definitely needs to be a part of it, because you don't want it. Again, it's the intention, right? They need the intention that you have and why you're doing it needs to be clear. Is the most important part. That's where most people, and that's in anything, that's in leadership and business, that's in anything you do. Most people are unclear in their communication with their expectations. And so it's harder to be more clear and to set those expectations for most people, because they want to beat around the bush. They don't want to be comfortable.
True. No confrontation. The other thing too is, and I think I talked about this on the last Ask Me Anything, is we need to be very cautious in attributing what we would consider or interpret as poor behavior as malicious. I think more often than not, it's really not malicious. Like, nobody's out to get you. Your mom doesn't want to undermine you. She doesn't hate you or your like it probably has very little, if anything, to do with that.
Yeah.
And more to do with what you said, which is, I want you to succeed and I don't think you're doing it right. And this is how you should. It's like you said, good intentions, poorly communicated, poorly enacted or delivered, but it's probably not malicious. So the reason that's important is that if we think it's malicious, then what happens? Well, our guard goes up, our defenses go up. Sometimes as men, instead of just playing defense, now we turn and go on the offense, which can be very appropriate in the right situation. But if it's not malicious, then your emotional response or your misinterpretation of the situation will lead to outcomes that really weren't necessary, when all it really took was a series of conversations, knowing that she and him want the best for you, but there's just a discrepancy in what that actually looks like.
Yeah. And it's in everything. So
everything. Absolutely.
No matter what you do, most people we're trained to be negative. We're trained to undermine to get our way because we don't know any different. You go into any work environment, any corporate environment, any bureaucracy, any even school, a lot of churches, the way people get things done is they bring up negative conversation about somebody and then how they would do it different or what that person's not doing right or whatever. And they're undermining and they don't know they do it, but they've been trained for, 10, 20, 30, 40 years of their life to do it that way. And so it just comes out that way, whether or not their intent is good or not.
Well, think about, so I'm 41 years old. Sean, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
45.
Okay. So we're about the same age, and I think about 25 years ago, roughly, you and I were in high school, and there's still grown men who are our age who are talking about the fact that their coach didn't like them and they were playing politics in high school. Like, yeah, bro, number one, get over that, because that was over 2 decades ago. Number two, probably not outside of maybe his own child, because there's some nepotism there, which we can all understand. Your coach just wanted to win baseball games or football games, and maybe you just weren't as good as you think you were. And then you translate that over to the career, and it's like, well, my boss is playing favorites. Right. Of course he is, because he wants to win. Like, he wants to make money. He wants to get the project on time. He wants to look good with his boss. He wants to whatever the thing is. Yes, 100% he's playing favorites. It's not because he doesn't like you. It's because he wants to win, whatever that looks like for him. If you can learn to deal with that and think about, like, Sean, if you're my boss and we don't have the best relationship, and I start thinking about, man, what does Sean want? Well, he wants to hit sales numbers. He wants to make sure that we're increasing every month. He wants to hit this deadline. He's got this task. He doesn't want to deal with bullshit. Okay, like, let me think about it from his perspective. Great. Okay, well, I can do all that. And I start doing that. Guess who becomes your favorite? Me. So it's not malicious, guys. Like, very rarely is Sean like, that Ryan guy is a real asshole, and I'm going to try to make his life hell. You don't have time for that. Like, nobody has, like, I don't have time to pick people out and try to make their lives miserable. I just want to win, and I'm going to bring the best people in my life that are going to help me do that in different facets and capacities of my life.
Yeah. And kudos to him. Last thing I'll say, kudos to this guy for being able to see that. And let's say all of this is true, everything we're saying, and he's done it, and he knows it's not malicious, and that's been established, that he still had the guts to establish boundaries and
enforce them. And that's the hard part.
And to do it, because most people won't, they're not willing to. And the fact that his and his wife's values and tactics and everything they've decided they're going to do for their children that they feel is best, that they're willing to stick to it, even to the point of, making it uncomfortable inside their
that's right,
their overall family dynamic.
Yeah. Cool, man. All right. We'll beat that one to death. How about the next question?
All right. It is from Mark Pallone. What traits do you feel a man needs to develop in order for the people he encounters to feel like he has that it factor?
I thought about this question, and I've talked about it. You're calling it the it factor. I personally call it the X factor. It's just semantics. It's the same thing. You recognize it when a man walks into a room and just has that level of dynamic where it's like a vacuum. The attention, the energy, the focus all gets drawn towards that one individual. And so what is it? What is the X factor? It's confidence.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's confidence at its very root. It's confidence. And it's not arrogance. It's not ego. It's not excessive pride. Those things can all be manufactured, right? That's like, if you're arrogant, you haven't earned that. You're just manufacturing that. You think you're better than you are, and everybody else sees right through it. So we might turn and pay attention to the guy like that who walks into the room, and then we're like, the minute he opens mouth, oh, got it. That's not real. That's fabricated. I know what that is now. And that's not the X factor. But the X factor, or the it factor, as you call it, is confidence. And confidence is found by bridging the gap between the way you as a man view yourself, your ideal self, the ideal version of yourself, and the actual behaviors and activities that you're engaged in. So, for example, if you say to yourself, I'm a healthy, strong, capable man, and that's how you view yourself, or at least that's how you'd like to view yourself, and yet you just ate a gallon of ice cream and you still have Cheeto dust on your shirt because you were lounging around binge watching the latest Netflix series, and maybe you just got done jacking off to 2 hours of porn, and you're up to your eyeballs in debt. How is that going to work? How do you think you're carrying yourself? If, however, you say to yourself, or at least have a vision of yourself being a confident, strong, healthy, capable man, and you woke up when your alarm went off an hour earlier than maybe you normally do, and the first thing you did is you went to the gym, and the second thing you did is you cooked your kids breakfast, and the third thing you did is you actually went and you showered and you trimmed up your beard and you combed your hair and you put some deodorant on and you brushed your teeth and you were deliberate and intentional about the clothes that you picked out for the day. And then the next thing you did is you went into the office and you planned out every hour of that entire day, and then you executed. How do you think you're going to feel about yourself? And are you going to move closer or further away from the it factor? If you do that every single day and you string enough of that together, you're going to move towards it. And here's what happens. It's a spectrum, right? Here you are on the spectrum. You might be a little left. If we say 0 to 100, for example, you might be at 20 or 30. And the first decision you make is going to move you towards a 19 or a 21. So when your alarm goes off and you hit the snooze button and you sleep in for another half hour, you went from a 20 to a 19 in your own mind. If, however, you said, no, stop, turn, get up, you went from 20 to 21. And then you did all those things, 21, 22, 25, 27, 30. And the next day, now you're actually starting at a 30. But there's a problem when you get to the 80 or 90, which is where we should be striving to get. 100, I don't even think is possible. But to get to that 80 or 90, there's a problem. We start thinking, oh, we're good enough. Like, this is good. I'm better than all my friends. I'm making more money than all my peers. You can see more of my six pack than you can the rest of the guys I spend time with. And so I'm okay if I sleep in today. You just went from 80 to 79. Oh, you know what? I'm going to have a few more drinks because I earn it. You just went from 79 to 77. Like, it's not once you reach it, you're done. It's continual improvement every single day to move that needle on that spectrum. And that's all the X factor is. Now, granted, I will say there are some people who are better looking than other people. There's some people that have more style or they're more charismatic. My wife and I went and watched the new Top Gun movie, which was phenomenal, by the way, incredible movie. And my wife leaned over to me at one of the scenes and she's like, why is Tom Cruise so cool? And I'm like, I don't know. He just is. And so there are people who are naturally just cooler than other people. They have more charisma. Like, I think about guys like Jocko. Like, Jocko's a great example. He's just cool. Like, he's got this menacing look. He's big. He's strong. He's intentional. He's got a great voice. And look, not to discount Jocko, because also he has the it factor. He's earned 80 to 90% of the results that you're experiencing. The other 10, yeah, he was just born big and has a cool voice. But it's that 90% that we're recognizing. We don't quite know how to get our pulse on it. That is that it factor, and it's earned. It's definitely earned.
Yeah. I mean, I can't add anything to it. It's funny. I wrote down confidence. It was the only thing I wrote down
That's it.
for the answer to that. And you you can tell, and that's the biggest thing. But a lot of times you can only tell if you have that it factor also. And so
No,
you have to,
it's mysterious if you don't. It's like, I don't get it. Right. Because you don't have confidence in yourself. So you don't, how would you understand it? It's like a magic trick. There's no magic. You know, if you see a magician on the street and he's doing card tricks, and you're like, whoa, it's magical. No, it's not. It's a trick, but you don't understand it because you don't get the trick. So you think it's magical or it's special. No, it's just a trick. You just have to figure it out. And then it's actually not all that cool. Like, it's just like, oh, that's it. I have to wake up on time and work out and show
it's
up.
just processed. Yeah.
That's
definitely
it.
not cool.
That's it.
Yeah. And there, I will say this, because it sounds like he was asking for the sake of trying to find out what to do to land there. And so what I would say, the only thing I could add as you were talking, I wrote down fail forward. And so you have to be willing to ask. So if you're in a group of men, let's say, and someone feels like they have that it factor, instead, I think what a lot of guys do as a mistake is they show up and they become that guy who tries to talk themselves into the conversation, tries to talk themselves into establishing themselves as part of the group, instead of showing up and maybe asking questions, maybe listening,
So good.
just being around and absorbing it in. And like, I get asked all the time, you know, what's the fastest way to become a strong leader? What's the fastest way to self-develop? Kind of what he's asking, right? My answer is always by osmosis. You need to find those guys, and then you need to insert yourself in places where you can be around them more often. And then when you're there, you listen, you ask questions, and then you start taking actions on the things that you learn from them. The conversations that you hear them talk about, you start doing more of the things you hear them say. And then before you know it, you're part of those conversations.
That question asking, Sean, is huge because
It's
so many
the
guys
biggest,
want
in
to,
my opinion.
well,
I
they
think.
want to assert themselves into a situation. And let's say there's five high achieving. Let me even be more crystal like clear about this. Is, let's say I'm in the room with Joe Rogan, Jocko Willink, Andy Frisella, maybe Mark Maron, like the best of the best podcasters in the world. If I go in there and I just start asserting myself and telling them everything that you can do as a podcaster, like, what, where do I get off talking about that? Like, these are the best podcasters in the world. But if I go and I say, man, I'm so grateful to be here with you guys. Like, what's one thing you did to really put your podcast on the map? And you go in there with humility and an open mind. And then, like you said, start applying that. That's just as valuable, because look, there's nothing I can add to those guys' life. Like, really, there isn't a whole lot I can add. I'm going to give you one more tidbit in a second, but there isn't really a whole lot I can add. But you know what is valuable to high achievers? And Sean, you've been very, very successful in your life. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would assume that if somebody came to you and said, hey, Sean, I want to build up my financial planning practice like you have. What have you done? And what should I do right now at the stage I'm at? And you give them 3 or 4 or 5 things, and they actually go do it. And then they call you up and they say, hey, I want to tell you, I'm really, really grateful for your time that you gave me 6 months ago. I took notes. I did everything that you said religiously, and my income has doubled in the past 6 months. That would be valuable to you, because you feel like, I want to give. I want to be benevolent. I want to help other people. And then you have a guy who actually does it. That's valuable.
Yeah.
There's one other way you can add value. If you don't feel like you have any, make introductions. I promise you guys, make introductions. If Sean, you came to me and you're like, hey man, I need some help with archery. I'm an archer, but I want to get better at it. I'm like, well, you're better. You are quite literally a better archer than I am personally. So what am I going to do? Well, if I'm arrogant I'm going to try to teach you all the things that I know, but you're like, that's stupid. You know all of that. So what I am going to do is I'm going to reach out to John Dudley, who's in my network, who you may or may not know. And I'm going to say, you know what? If you want to know everything, connect with this guy. And you see how I just made myself invaluable to you without actually having to doing much except for make a phone call or shoot a text.
Yeah.
It's the best way to add value into people's lives is make connections for them.
And it couldn't be, let's say you didn't know Dudley. When I got introduced to archery, my friend he's friends with John Dudley. He's hunts with him. But he also learned from him. And he told me, hey, look, just go on watch the knock on videos starting at 1, and go through it and just go 1, 2, 3, do the thing that the course. If you do it, you watch, number 1 is for the first week. Number 2 is for the second week. Right. And you do that.
School of Knock is what it's called.
School of Knock. Right. And that's what I did. So he was personal friends, but it's not like he gave me his number and said, here, call John Dudley, but he knew the resources that Dudley had. And he said, hey, go watch the videos. And so that was all he did. It wasn't a big major thing, but I was willing to ask. I was willing to sound like I knew nothing, which I didn't. And then he told me to watch the videos. And guess what? I didn't call him after every week and be like, oh, he said this. What do I do? Whatever. I followed it, went through it, did it, got better. And then when I felt like I was good enough to be able to hunt, I happened to be going out to where he lived, which was the Big Island. And I said, hey, I'm going to be out there. I'd love to go out with you and learn some more. I'm a pretty good shot at this distance. This is kind of where I'm at now. Do you have the time? He said, yeah, let's get out there. Plus I got another friend who will take you out. And those 2 guys have become the guys who I've gone to with more questions than anybody else. And I still ask them questions on little things that in my mind, before I even ask, sometimes I think it may be dumb. Maybe I can Google it. Maybe I can spend some hours, but I really just want to know their opinion on it. And so I ask, and not once have I had them be like, well, that was a dumb question or whatever. They've always answered. They've always given me a resource or a place to go, and it's always helped me. Yeah. But the difference also is that I've done it. And so the next time I did call them, if they have never once been like, well, remember when I told you this back then, did you do it? It was already apparent that I did.
Right.
So you're going to lose people if you try and sound like you know what you're talking about, like you said. Back to that thing, if you were with Rogan and Jocko and those guys, if you were invited to something like that, or you happen to even, let's say you paid to be at something like that, because that happens sometimes, right? You pay to be,
which is a viable strategy. And don't feel bad about doing that.
Exactly. That's why I brought it up. But you get there and then you become that guy who's trying to insert himself and sound like he knows what he's talking about. You're not going to be invited back, or the next thing you pay for to be at, they're going to see you coming and you're going to become that guy, that they try and distance from their conversations. And so, you're going to go backwards in trying to do it that way. And so it's getting there, asking the questions, but then doing it sometimes means more than asking, because you ask if people come to me, the fastest way to get me to not continue to mentor or coach you is when you come to me the second time and I ask you if you did the first things I told you.
Yeah.
Right. Or ask you the results from what you got. And if you said, well, I didn't implement that because, which is what almost everybody does in their answer when they didn't do something, they give you the reason, the validity behind why they didn't do it, because their situation is different. That you might get one more chance to do it right again. Maybe, right? That's what I'm saying, might. And
at that point, I'm like, well, just go listen to the podcast then, check out the website, sign up for the emails, and good luck.
Yeah. So don't mess it up.
The only other thing I would say, guys, is, and you said it, Sean, you said assert yourself, 100% assert yourself. And then the last thing I would say is, if you're trying to develop that it factor and really figure out how you can be like that guy that you see, just go to orderofman.com/battle ready. And don't just sign up for the emails. You're going to get emails. It's free, but you're going to get the emails. And don't just read them and think they're cute and clever and like they're cool. Like, actually assert yourself and do them for the next 30 days, and you're going to put yourself on the trajectory to develop that it factor in your life. Not in 30 days, not 90 days, probably not even in a year, but you're going to move on that sliding scale on that spectrum. So it's orderaman.com/battle ready.
You know, and last thing I'll say, but it has to be said for the Iron Council. My favorite thing about the Iron Council is you have guys on every end of the spectrum of what we're talking about. And you have all of those guys with it factor are all there to help other men be the same. That's and right. So it's a place where you have guys at all levels that can go in, and it's going to be obvious. The guys who are newer, who are trying to figure it out, who are, you know, for lack of a better word, actually not lack of a better word, because what it is, they're confused. They don't know where to start. And you've got guys at the highest levels that are not just willing, but they're there to help those men.
Well, you're one of
where
those
they're
people.
At or better.
Like the amount that you give to the Iron Council is disproportionate in a positive way to what I imagine you'd receive from it. And there's probably a sense of pride, a sense of satisfaction. We're friends. You get to be here and share some wisdom. And so there is some value in that for you. But I think understand what I'm saying is that the amount that you give is disproportionate positively to what you would get from the Iron Council. So you're one of those guys.
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate that, because that's the goal. But I would also argue that me being in the Iron Council keeps me sharp. It keeps me on point. It keeps me on my game. And doing it the way that I do helps me be successful in every other area of my life. So yeah, it's not like I'm just volunteering time to be there with no benefit to myself either. I don't think any of the guys in the Iron Council with the it factor are doing that either. They all have something to gain by being there. It's the ultimate breeding ground. If we're talking osmosis, right? If you ever watch cells kind of grow, right, through osmosis, and then others come into the group and show up, and then they all start multiplying. I mean, that's what the Iron Council is. And that's the only way we're going to achieve your mission. And it's by that breeding ground for guys with it factor.
Yep. 100%. Cool, man. What's next?
Next question's from Jacob Pinion. He says, Kip mentioned in a recent episode, so I don't know if I have zero experience with doing this. He said, journaling BJJ. I'm a 1-stripe white belt, so it's the first time I've heard about this. Do you suggest I journal, and what does that look like? Any tips?
I don't personally journal. I know Kip writes and documents, and I know people who journal as well. I'm actually working with Pete Roberts. He's the founder of Origin in creating. Hold on, I'm going to grab this real quick. So we've got our battle planner. A lot of you guys are familiar with. We're actually creating one specifically for jiu-jitsu. We've already created it, have all the questions and the format and everything. Now we just have to build it. So that should be coming online soon. So again, I don't personally journal, but here's what I do is I'm very, very active in jiu-jitsu up until I've got a shoulder. I'm supposed to be wearing my sling. I'm not. I know all you guys are gonna be like, well, take it easy, whatever. Okay, good. Get that out of your system. It's fine. Okay. I'll put my sling on later. But what I do is I will go to practice. I learned this from a friend of mine who's also with Origin. His name is Dennis, very, very talented and technical purple belt. And I'm sorry, purple. Gosh, I think he's purple. Very technical. And he says, always come to training with something you want to work on. Like, don't ever just go to training and be like, I want to do good today, or I want to submit people, or I don't want to be submitted. As a 1-stripe white belt, that's probably what you're thinking. Like, I just want to be able to last the time without getting submitted. Hey, look, that's a fair objective. Like, just try to last, just try to survive with a blue belt or a purple belt. That's cool. But Dennis says, no, come with something specific. So the first time I ever rolled with Dennis, again, very technical purple belt. And I trained with him, and he gave me his back almost immediately. And we'd run from 8 to 10 minute rounds. So for 8 to 10 minutes, I was on his back trying to submit him. And I'm like, man, this guy sucks as a purple belt. And then I went and trained and rolled with some other people, and I came back to him, and all of a sudden he was like, good. I was like, whoa, this is a huge discrepancy from 20 minutes ago when I took your back and I was on your back for 8 minutes. And I talked to him afterwards and I'm like, hey man, like I kind of get the feeling that when you and I were training the first time, you weren't maybe going 100% or like what? And he's like, oh no, I was going 100%. He's like, I was just working my back defense. I was like, oh, got it. And I said, tell me about that. And he's like, well, usually when I come to training, there's one specific element of my game that I really want to work on. And so when I came to train today, I really wanted to work on defending my neck, defending my back. If somebody else got my back, like how I can reverse. And once I reverse, then I actually give up my back again and go right back to it. Cause that's my goal. Like I'm working this today. And I said, man, that's really interesting. I've never done that. He's like, most people don't because it's hard. It's hard because you're going to get submitted. You're going to be exposed. You're going to maybe not look as good as you actually are. And so there's an ego thing to it. So you got to let that go. And I've started to do that in my game up until me being out for the next 3 months. But that was a huge, huge help in my game is like, all right, what do I want to work today? Well, I want to work knee on belly, or I want to work guard retention, or I want to work sweeps or whatever it is. You just pick that thing. And then when you're done, what I would suggest, and I don't do this written, but this would be a very good journaling tactic, is do what we call an after action review. So an after action review is a series of 5 questions. The first, and this applies not to just to jiu-jitsu guys. This is every facet of life. When I get done with this podcast, I'm doing an after action review. It's what did I accomplish? Right. And so that actually means that you went to something, whether it was class or the podcast or a conversation or something with a goal in mind. And what did you accomplish? Well, I accomplished my goal. Congratulations. You ought to pat yourself on the back. That's good. What didn't you accomplish? Well, maybe you hit 80% of your goal, but you missed 20. And you need to know that. You need to be really truthful with yourself. Man, I went to defend my back and I did good on 8 of my 10 rolls, but 2 of my rolls, a couple of guys were able to submit me. Okay, well, I wasn't 100. I was 80%. I want to know that. Then so those are the 2 first questions. What did I get done? What didn't I get done? Third question is, what did I do well? Okay, well, I defended my neck really well. Or on this podcast, I came to the podcast prepared. I knew what the questions were ahead of time, and I jotted down some notes. So think about what your strengths are. Fourth question, what did I not do so well? Well, I didn't get my 20%, but the reason I didn't is because I got distracted when they started playing with my feet and doing some feet game stuff, and I exposed my neck, and that's what created the problems. Okay, good. You got to know that. And then the 5th question is, what am I going to do next time? So that's a great journaling tactic, whether it's jiu-jitsu or pistol training or podcasting or having a conversation with your wife or having a conversation, to go to that earlier question, with your folks about the way that they're grandparenting and involved in your life. Do that after action review. What did I get done? What didn't I do? What did I do well? What did I do that didn't go so well? And what am I going to do next time in this situation?
That was so good. I hope guys were taking notes on that just in general. Like I said, I have nothing to add to the question, but what I want to point out is you did everything we talked about to this point in this podcast as far as it factor. So talk about being high caliber. What could have happened when you went and you rolled with that guy is you could have left and you could have been pissed at him for taking it easy on you. And then that could have gone into other sessions, that could have gone down the road. You would have learned nothing, except that you maybe don't want to roll with that guy because you feel like he's like playing with you.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Yes.
Instead, you ask the question, like we said, which might have felt like, oh man, I'm not totally comfortable asking the question, or maybe I'm going to be perceived as like lower caliber because I'm asking this question, but you were willing to ask regardless. And then you got the answer, and you, through that answer, understood his intention. You understood where he was coming from, that feeling of this guy's toying with me, or he's not going 100%, or he's messing around with me because I'm a lower belt level. went away, and it gave you a tool that you are going to be able to use for the rest of your BJJ experience. And probably one of the key tools that you've been able to take to make you better. Again, it was just showing up like you always do, being willing to ask the questions, take in and pay attention to the answers in the conversations, and then use those things in how you do it in your life.
And assuming it's not malicious.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't assume he was toying with me. I was like, what? Like, he's not very good. That was my thought. Like, he's not, but I didn't think he was being a dick.
You didn't, but most people I think would, especially men.
I think maybe
they have those thoughts in their mind.
And that's the point I'm making, is like, it's very rarely is it malicious. And even guys who do have, I'll say this, people that do have malicious intent, if you just confront them, let's say that you were just a total jerk to me and we were coworkers, and I came to you and I said, hey, Sean, like, we've been working together for a couple of years, and man, we've never had a great relationship. And quite often it feels like either you don't like me, or maybe you're intimidated by me, or maybe we just have completely polar opposite personalities, but it comes across as you just really have a level of hostility in me in working together. Man, I don't want that to be the case. Like, I'm not leaving, and I don't think you are, and I don't want you to, but like, I'm going to be here, and I would like to have a great working relationship. Am I missing something? And whatever the reason was, whether it was ignorance or hate or just your personality, or you can't communicate, like, whatever it is, I just took down every single wall that you have. Like, I just completely dismantled your defense and offense against me. Like, there's nothing else to hide behind. And I'm not doing it maliciously. Like, we got to work together, bro. So let's, like, what can I do to make this a better situation? Your defense and your offense was dismantled in 10-minute conversation just because you had the balls to assert yourself in a constructive way.
And who knows, maybe that becomes a lifelong friendship.
It could very well. It really could.
But at the very least, it's going to become an amicable relationship where now you can work together. You understand each other. You understand your intentions, and you can go about your business in a healthy way.
That's right. That's right. Cool. Let's take a couple more.
Okay. Graham Helder says, I recently moved halfway across the country. I'm having difficulty approaching men in my church and striking up conversation. In my old church, I grew up with everyone, but now I feel like an outsider. How do I beat that social anxiety and engage with my peers? So, Sean,
I'm pretty certain we answered this one last week. So this is one that I may have missed, but yeah, it's a great question. It's a very important question. So go back to last week's podcast, because I'm 99% sure that we hit this one last week.
Got it. Sorry.
No worries. I looked over them too, and I missed it as well. So,
okay. What is the mindset necessary to build generational wealth as natives in this young country? I don't understand the natives in this young country part, but maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if that's relevant in the question, but I think I'll default to you, Sean. You've got a financial background from the way that you guys have built your wealth. I'm going to default to you. I might have a few things to add, but I'll turn it to you first.
I think first you have to become educated. It has to start with you. If you grew up in a family like mine that does not have generational wealth and the things being passed down, here's what happens to most people, right? We talk about the now 1%ers. When I started my practice in 1999, we called them the 5%ers. It's which nobody talks about. So in 1999, just, a couple decades ago, 5% of the people in the country held most of the wealth. Now it's 1%, right? So that's
20 years is not a long time either.
That's not at all. And so that's getting worse and worse. And everybody's getting more and more angry at the 1% instead of finding ways to become the 1% and turn the 1% into 2%, into 5, into 10. And that could happen for all of us, but we have to be educated first. We have to drop our bad habits that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And for most of us, start completely brand new. And so that's what my wife and I did. My wife, I thought I grew up pretty poor. She grew up even worse than me. And both of us have done well, but first through self-education and learning fundamentals. And so when I say education, I'm not talking about how to pick stocks, how to, choose the right investments. I'm talking fundamental things like get out of debt the fastest and then stay out of debt, to save a percentage of your income, to live below your means, to build good habits that will serve you, that other people in your family will see in you as a way that you live your life and they think is normal. So generationally, if your kids don't see a normal pattern in what you do with your money that generates wealth, you can't expect them to know the right things to do with their money. And so if you don't do those things yourself, so first look at you. Do you have a bunch of debt? If like I look at my wife and I, we have zero debt outside of the mortgage on our new home. And we couldn't pass that up because it's 2 point something percent. So right. I'd way rather leverage that to something and have all those millions to invest, right? That'll make me far more. So there is a difference between good and debt, good and bad debt. If you don't know what the difference between good and bad debt is, learn it, right? Like understand that. So understanding savings. People ask me investment advice all the time, trying to find the best quote unquote investment, the best stock, is real estate better than stock? I hear that one all the time. What should I invest in first? The stock market, real estate? My answer is always learn the two and figure out what's best for you.
For you, right?
Like I don't have any rental properties anymore. I used to, and I don't, because my wife and I both figured out that's not our wheelhouse and it's not what we want. I don't want tenants. I don't want, that possible liability. I don't want any of that. That's just me personally.
And look, let me just interject on that one, Sean, real quick, because I do have rental properties and I love it.
I was just going to say that,
I have a property manager that I've hired that manages it. So it's out of my plate. And so, yeah, I lose some of the profits because that's paid to him and his company. But I've got a tenant in one of my properties who's been there for 6 years. I love it. Occasionally I'm going to have to replace the carpet or maybe get a repairman out there to do the water heater or whatever. But it's awesome. Somebody else is paying my mortgage. Somebody else has a beautiful home to live in. I get a lot of value from that financially and in other ways. And neither is right or wrong. It's just different.
Yeah. And you'll probably accumulate way more in real estate assets than I will. And, and who knows, maybe down the road that'll change for me. Maybe I'll come across a deal that I can't pass up or whatever, maybe I'll meet a good manager that wants to work with me and kind of use my assets
for the managers.
Yeah.
or alternatively, maybe the market's doing really well and I could sell my house for, 2.5 times what I bought it for or what I owe on it. And then I can take that and dump it into a really nice business opportunity. So yeah, priorities change.
Yeah. And I'm better at business. So instead, my wife and I started other businesses with that money. Right. And so, again, everybody's different, but before you even get to that point, if you don't save money already, if you don't live below your means, if you can't get by when you're broke, if you can't pay bills when you're broke, you're not going to pay bills when you're making a lot of money. And I think most people's solution to their financial problem is to make more. So they spend their entire life trying to make more money. And the traditional route of that is, well, I need to go to more schooling, right? So I need to go to more school so I could get a higher paying job so I can make more money. And then that's going to help me eventually be wealthy. Well, they're not going to teach you anything about wealth in school. They're going to teach you how to work for someone else. And so you're just going to learn how to get another job with more money, still have bad financial habits. And so no matter how much you make is never going to be enough because you're still going to spend it poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And so first establish your debt process. Like Ramsey has a great fundamental thing for that. And I know you've mentioned that a lot. But his debt thing, I think, is the best thing he has. And then him telling people to save money. If you're not saving at least 10% of your income, you're doing it wrong. I know my wife and I personally, we save over 50% of our income. Why? Because it's important to us. So as our income's increased, it's not like, okay, great, now we have this money to buy a new Lamborghini and this money to buy this or whatever. We've actually increased how much we save because that's our habit, because it's important to us, because we understand compound interest. We know where that's going to land us and the generations financially. We also know the impact that we can have with that money. It's important to us to give, to be involved in philanthropy and the things that are important to us. And like, I want to be able to write checks for millions of dollars to things I feel are important, right? And I'm not there yet. And so I need to be putting more money away in good places that are going to earn a decent return, so that it puts me in a position to be able to do that, right? And so if I just not only spend all the money I make, but spend it before I have it, which is 90+% of the country, I'm never going to get there, right? Yeah. So start with those fundamentals, start doing it regardless. Don't use the excuse of where you stand now financially, regardless of that circumstance. Because I'll end with this because I know it's going on. I chose to be homeless. It's an extreme situation, but I had $30,000 worth of debt that I had to get out of. And I couldn't get out of it. So I had to reduce my circumstance. And so I chose, someone's at my front door. I chose to live in my car, so I wouldn't have rent to pay, so I could pay off bills faster. I voluntarily repoed a second truck that I had. I sold my dirt bike. I got rid of my jacuzzi that I had, right? That was financed. So I got rid of everything, to that point was important to me financially. I still owed money on some of it, even though I didn't have it anymore, but it was all a means to an end to pay it off as fast as possible. In that process, while I was sleeping in my car, I still had $200 a month going towards long-term investments. So I'm a single guy, right? Broke, living in my car, and still $200 a month I'm putting away in a long-term investment that was going to accumulate into, there's the people at my door. That's going to accumulate into millions of dollars by the time I'm in my 50s and 60s. Yeah. And so that was more important to me than having the dirt bike right now. Right. Right. And most people aren't willing to get rid of some of the stuff that they have right now to start those good habits.
Sean, the only other thing I would say, and maybe we'll take one more question and wrap it up. Are you good? Do you need to go?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Okay. They got rerouted.
Awesome. The dogs rerouted them. Perfect. The only other thing I would say for this specific question, because you're asking about generational wealth, is, Sean, you and I grew up in similar situations where a single mother probably came from a situation where, although I didn't personally know how bad the finances were, there were probably a lot of sleepless nights wondering how the mortgage was going to get paid and is the car going to get repoed and all this kind of thing that my mom made sure that she shielded us from. We never were concerned with that. But also she taught me a lot of these basic foundational principles. Very good with her money, very responsible, budget, keeping track of everything, very good that way. And my family and I are in a completely different situation. The amount of financial abundance and prosperity that we have relative to the way I grew up is exponential. And I'm very grateful. I feel blessed for that. We've created a lot of that, and we're very blessed with a lot of that as well. I've been very cautious not to rob my children of the opportunity to struggle and the opportunity to do things on their own. Now, I can create opportunities that I never had access to because of the financial prosperity we found ourselves in, but I'm not going to just rain down financial abundance upon them. I'm going to teach my children what I know. Case in point, my oldest son runs our store. About 6 months ago, he decided he wanted to start a podcast. I didn't pay for any of that. There's a microphone right there. There's a camera right there. I don't own those things. He owns, like, that's his property. He paid for it. He's got a dirt bike downstairs that he paid for. I don't own that. It's people like, oh, can I ride your bike? I'm like, it's not mine, but you got to ask him. That's his bike. It's not mine. He paid $4,000 for a website, maninthemaking.com. I didn't pay for it. Like, he wrote a check, or he had it drafted for $4,000. What kind of 12-year-old does that? Well, the one who not only has access to the opportunities, but the one whose parents don't give them everything and make them earn those things. So if you're talking about generationally, don't rob your children of the hardships that you had, because the hardships that you had are a big part of the way that you are right now and the position you found yourself in.
As the two thoughts there. Number one, I can see my view in my little makeshift area here. I can see the view of part of my fence line for my property, right? It's 10 acres of black farm fence line. And the bottom, because my son's dog is a pug, we're putting chicken wire along the bottom of that so he can't squeeze out and go find himself on a road and get run over. And so I have my boys out there doing that, right? They're going to chicken wire the bottom of 10 acres of fence line, right? And
you could hire somebody to do that.
I've had two different guys tell me two different ways to do it. That'll be cheaper, faster, all of the above, but that would defeat me giving them work to do, right? And I'll pay them for some of it. I've told them that I'm going to pay them for it, and they're going to understand the difference between labor and then owning a business. They've all run different types of businesses. You know, my son is mowing our lawn here, and so we got a 0-turn mower for him, which is kind of cool.
Awesome.
The best. I actually got it for me. And then he told me, Dad, I want to do it. Can I do it? Can I make money instead of you paying somebody? Can that be me? So just the fact that they want to do that already, instead of, you know, expecting things to be handed to them, I think says something, even at their ages. The second thing I want to say, and I'm going to do that forever. I'm not just going to get all of my kids have to buy their own car. My daughter, I'll match them dollar for dollar. I have that advantage, you know, at least my reasoning behind that is I don't want them to buy a $4,000 car. If they've saved $4,000, I want it to be an $8,000 car, just so it's safer and more reliable.
Well, the same concept of even financing, right? Is like, I'll finance it for you, but you're going to have to pay. I'm not buying a car. You're buying a car. I'll finance it with interest, but you're paying me.
Yes. Yeah. If you're going to do that, either way, I want them to be in a better car, but I want them to, you know, grow it, build it, buy it, feel, you know, the confidence that comes with that. But the second thing is that the generational wealth that you create doesn't mean necessarily always that you're going to be the wealthy one. So like your mom's a good example of that. You know, I don't know her situation, and I don't know if she's wealthy or not, depending on how you define it, you know, by how you and Kip talked about last week. But, you know, I'm assuming she's not worth millions and millions and millions of dollars, but you said it yourself. You saw those habits in her that allowed her as a single mom to be able to provide well for you. And now, you know, being a father and having kids of your own, you know, and having 4 kids and a wife and having to provide for them, you know how hard that must have been for her.
Yeah.
But those things that she did with her money gave her the ability to do it well for you. And now you, with better resources, if you implement those same habits and the same structure that she had, that's going to help you build that wealth. And I think that's what's happening in your family. Again, I could be putting words in your mouth.
You're right on.
That's what I caught from what you said.
Sean, let's do a rapid fire on the last question, if there is one, and then we'll wrap things up today.
Yeah, this one's a good one. Chris Baber, my wife and I exercise regularly, but don't always eat the healthiest. What tips do the both of you have for sticking to a healthy diet?
You're asking the wrong guy. This I'll exercise all day, every day. I'll walk, not currently because what I'm dealing with, but I'll walk, I'll run, I'll train jujitsu, I'll be outside, we'll be running around, we'll be shooting each other with airsoft guns. Like that's not an issue for me. But my issue is food. What I would say, here's what I would say, just from a personal anecdotal level, is there's certain times of the day that are a struggle for me. I don't typically eat breakfast. About 70 to 80% of the time, I don't eat lunch. And it's not because I'm intermittent fasting. It's because I'm so busy and wrapped up and engaged with work that I don't even think about it. I'm just like, I'm working. Like I can't take an hour. Like I'm doing it. And it's not even, I don't even want to, like, I want to work. I have a propensity for that. So dinner is made by my wife. It's usually a very well-rounded meal. I struggle a little bit with portions. So I would say be aware of that. That's something I have to be aware of. And the time that I eat the most is if the kids are in bed and we're winding down and my work is done and the phone's away and I'm spending time with my wife, I will snack. I'll eat the string cheeses and the chips and salsa and the crackers and the leftover brownies and the leftover dinner. And so I have to be very aware of that. And this goes back to the very first question we asked today, is put those boundaries in place, which is you don't eat after 7:00. You just don't. That's just a rule. Don't eat after 7, because I know if I eat after 7, it's not going to go well. That's what I can give you. And that just comes from personal experience.
That's exactly what I would say. What I would add on top of that is if it's really important enough to you, is that you'll meal plan. And I don't know if Trish does that for you guys in the way that she shops or the way, or when she makes meals. But for my wife and I, because we're both engaged in our business and multiple businesses, and we're like you, like both of us will forget to eat because we're engaged in what we're doing. And we've always been that way. But if every Sunday we sit down and look at, okay, the coming week, what do we have this week? Right? This is our family planning that we have, our family nights. And we say, this is what all the kids have. This is what we have. This is, the things that are non-negotiable that we're going to show up to, that we have. Like this podcast was one of them, right? Like this morning, we talked about it last night. What was going to happen today? The fact that no kids, we've heard stomping through the house and running around and yelling at each other and screaming at each other, is because I planned it yesterday.
Just that dog needs to pay attention better.
The dog, but the housekeepers showed up today. We had the conversation last night and we sent them multiple texts to see if they were coming today, because we didn't know, and they didn't get back to us. They just showed up right now. Right. And so that was out of our control, but we still put in the effort and all the things we needed to do to make sure that was part of the plan. Right. In that, we okay, what are we going to do for food this week? So all of those times, all of the stuff, everything we know is going on. And then we look at, okay, what are the meals going to look like? Because this is an important part of us, the way we eat, especially for my wife and daughter, because they have food restrictions, and things they can eat. And so we know if we're going to be traveling or going somewhere, we have to put ourselves in a position for them to be able to eat well, because it affects them physically more than me. And so again, if it's important enough, you'll do it. And that's why we meal plan and we eat better. And so we have a sheet that it has every day of the week, and it has written on there what we are going to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then we do all the shopping around that meal plan. So we also save money that way, because we're not buying snacks that we want to get while we're at the store. It's whatever we have written down, we stick to that. We buy everything. We have our stuff for the week. We'll waste less food. And then we also eat better. And so we have the propensity to go to fast food, to get delivery, to do DoorDash, to, all the things that aren't going to be as good for us. We have the less propensity to default to those things because we've planned it. Now, for most people, it probably sounds pretty extreme. But just like anything, if it's important enough to you, you'll spend the time. It takes us probably an extra half hour to make the plan, but it saves us time at the grocery store, and it saves us time in figuring out what we're going to eat, where to eat, all of that stuff, because it's already a go. So in my opinion, I think it's a wash. I don't think it's less time or more time.
Yeah,
I think it becomes a wash.
it's
But you're
probably a
eating
wash,
better.
if not better. And like you said, if it's important to you, and you'll also get better at it. Human beings are
Oh,
amazing.
it sucks at
We
first.
get we get so efficient with whatever we do. And whether it's good or bad. Meal planning, I'd put on the good side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Looking at porn, I'd put on the bad side of the spectrum. But you're going to get good at either one of those things. The more you do it, you're going to get good at it. You're going to get efficient at it. So, yeah, it might be hard at first, whether it's jujitsu or meal planning or this or that. Like doing it's always going to be hard at first, but you trust me, you will get better at it.
Build it to a habit. And as you say that, be willing to cut out the stuff that doesn't serve you. So if it is porn, maybe it's not porn, maybe it's just being on Facebook, maybe it's being on Instagram, maybe you're wasting a half hour a day, an hour a day, maybe you're watching TV and that doesn't serve you, right? So you're watching TV and snacking at the same time, double whammy. So look at your day, be truthful with it, figure out what you do on a daily basis, where you waste time, and then cut out some of that stuff and replace it with the other things to build good habits that are going to serve you.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, Sean, I appreciate you. Let's go celebrate 4th of July. It is 4th of July as of the recording of this. So we're going to go celebrate. I got a few more appointments. You probably do as well. And then I'm taking the afternoon and doing fireworks and bounce house and all this other kind of stuff. But Sean, I appreciate
Can I say one thing to that real fast?
Yeah, go for it, man.
We're both here on 4th of July where most people are literally doing nothing today. You know, we're working. So earlier people talked about being the it factor, being high caliber, all that stuff. Like just the fact that you're willing to still be working here, like you've made that commitment to your business. You don't need to be here.
Yeah.
You could have had, me and someone else or whatever do this in place of you, but you chose to do it because you've made that commitment. And that says a lot about you and who you are. And where most people are, they're literally doing nothing, choosing to do nothing. And in my opinion, that's not giving back to the founders of our country. That's not upholding the rights and the freedoms and things that we have by just wasting our time. It's serving people. It's making a difference. It's being willing to work when other people aren't. And that's going to give you things that other people aren't going to have. So I just want to say that because we hadn't said that at any point today. It is 4th of July. We're still spending the time and still want to serve people. And I hope there's value there. But it's, in my opinion, how you show your gratitude for the freedoms we have sometimes is by, not just taking time off. So something to think about. Well,
I appreciate it. I will say I have every intention of doing nothing later this afternoon, but just not yet. and that's one of the mantras at the house that we have, our home, is you do the work first. The work comes first. The chores come first. The projects, the tasks, the assignments, the whatever comes first. And let's go do the bounce house. Let's go zero in our rifles. Let's go play or lift or go to jiu-jitsu. Yes, 100%. We're going to do all those things, but the work always comes first, and they know that, and they hate it right now, but at some point they're going to love it. Yeah. It's in all of us, right? All the freedoms we want come with sacrifice and work first. That's right. That's right. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, enjoy your week. I appreciate you, Sean. And also appreciate you guys. Great questions today. A couple of things I'd like you to do. If you feel so inclined, join the Facebook group. We talked about the Battle Ready program. That's a free 30-day email course. You're going to get 17 emails over 30 days. There's some gaps in there to give you some time on some assignments and challenges we issue to you, and you need a day or two for some of those things. And Sean, you'd mentioned the Iron Council. The Iron Council is closed right now, but go ahead and do the Battle Ready program at orderoman.com/battle ready. That way, when we open up, you're going to hit the ground running, and you're going to have an advantage that even some veteran members don't fully have because they didn't go through the Battle Ready program. So orderoman.com/battle ready. Leave a rating, leave a review, take a screenshot, share it. Let's get this message of reclaiming and restoring masculinity out there. I think it goes a long way towards freedom. I said this because we're talking about 4th of July. I said this last year. I took a picture in front of my barn, and there was the American flag, and next to it and lower, as it should be, was our Order of Man flag. And I said, neither one of these flags would exist without the other. The American flag does not exist without strong, capable men who are protectors, providers, and presiders for themselves, their families, their members in the community, and their businesses. And the Order of Man flag doesn't exist without a country that so many men and women have fought and died for, to preserve the rights for me to share, for you to share, and for you guys to do and act and behave the way that you see fit. So neither one of them exist without the other. I always want to make sure we are at that point. All right, guys, have a great week. We'll catch you on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.